They thought they had just stopped another suspicious woman on a dark street. A routine check? Not exactly. One word, and their careers were hanging by a thread. They had no idea who was standing in front of them. But this was only the beginning. Layla Walker, 42, gripped the steering wheel of her sleek black SUV, the city lights flickering off the polished hood. It had been one hell of a day, and all she wanted was to get home, kick off her heels, and maybe pour herself a glass of something cold. The streets were unusually quiet for this hour, the hum of her engine blending with the distant sounds of the city settling down. Then, flash. Blue and red lights lit up behind her, reflecting off the rearview mirror like a warning sign from the universe. Layla sighed, muttering under her breath, "Oh, great. What now?" She signaled and pulled over smoothly to the curb. From the patrol car behind, two officers stepped out. Sergeant Bill Harper, 50, moved like a man who had seen too much and cared too little. His partner, Officer Jake Miller, 28, walked with a cocky bounce, smirking like he owned the street. Bill adjusted his belt as he approached the window. "License and registration, ma'am." Bill's voice was gruff, tired. Layla kept calm, handing over her documents. "Evening, officer. Everything all right?" Jake hovered behind, eyeing the car like it was a stolen prize. "We've had reports of stolen vehicles matching this description. This yours for real?" Layla raised a brow. "You can run the plates." Jake snatched the documents, not bothering to check. Instead, he clicked his tongue. "Step out of the vehicle, ma'am. We need to take a look." Layla's jaw tightened. "Is that really necessary?" Jake smirked. "Unless you've got something to hide." Bill shifted uncomfortably, but stayed quiet. Layla unbuckled and stepped out, heels clicking on the pavement. Her face was calm, but her eyes were sharp. Jake leaned into the SUV, rifling through the glove compartment without asking. "That's an overstep, officer," Layla said, voice steady but firm. Jake didn't look up. "Just doing my job." Passers-by started slowing down. One man pulled out his phone, recording silently from across the street. Bill glanced around, noticing the growing audience. "Jake, maybe we should relax, Bill. I've got this." Jake slammed the glove box shut. "You're acting way too calm for someone being stopped by the police. That's suspicious." Layla folded her arms. "Or maybe I know my rights." Jake's smirk faded. He stepped closer. "Know what? Let's continue this at the station. Turn around, hands behind your back." Bill's face dropped. "Jake, hold on. That's not protocol." Jake ignored him, pulling out handcuffs. "You're under arrest for obstructing an officer?" Layla didn't flinch, but her eyes narrowed. Around them, murmurs rippled through the small crowd. Someone shouted, "Yo, why's she getting arrested?" "She didn't do anything." Jake's grip tightened on the cuffs. Before he could snap them on, a deep voice cut through the tension. "What the hell is going on here?" Both officers froze. From behind them, a man in plain clothes stormed over. Captain Marcus Reed, 55, had a presence that demanded attention. His face was set in a hard scowl. Bill stiffened. "Captain Reed, sir, we were just—" Marcus held up a hand, eyes locked on Layla. "Do you two even know who this is?" Jake blinked, the color draining from his face. She's—" Marcus turned to Layla, voice tight. "Ma'am, I apologize for this mess. This is a misunderstanding." Layla didn't blink. She reached into her coat pocket and slowly pulled out her badge. She held it up, letting it catch the streetlights. "Layla Walker, your new chief of police." Silence. Jake's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Bill took a shaky step back. Marcus let out a slow breath. Well, gentlemen, I think we have a lot to talk about. The crowd began to murmur louder. Cameras were still rolling. Jake's grip on the cuffs slackened as the weight of the situation settled on his shoulders. Layla leaned in slightly toward Jake, voice low and cold. First day on the job, and this is how you welcome me? Marcus shook his head slowly. Oh, this is going to be fun. And just like that, Layla knew change was coming, and it was starting tonight. The silence that followed Layla Walker's revelation felt like a vacuum. Jake Miller's cocky smirk had all but evaporated, leaving behind a pale, awkward shell of the man who was so eager to slap cuffs on her just moments ago. Bill Harper shifted uneasily on his feet, eyes darting between his partner and their new chief. Captain Marcus Reed exhaled slowly, his stern eyes boring into Jake. You're about 5 seconds away from making the worst mistake of your career, son. Jake swallowed hard. Captain, I didn't know. She didn't identify herself. Layla arched a brow, her voice smooth but razor-sharp. Oh, I'm sorry. Is there a specific way black women are supposed to introduce themselves to avoid being manhandled? Should I have embroidered it on my jacket? Jake's face turned a deeper shade of red. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Bill cleared his throat awkwardly. Marcus took a slow, deliberate step toward Jake. Let me get this straight. You ignored standard protocol, rifled through a civilian's property without cause, and attempted an unlawful arrest, all while being filmed. Jake's eyes flicked toward the growing crowd. Phones were still raised. Every word was being recorded. Bill, trying to salvage the situation, muttered, "We thought the vehicle might have been stolen. We had reports." Layla crossed her arms. Reports? Interesting. You didn't even run my plates. You just assumed. Funny how that works. The tension in the air was thick. Marcus ran a hand over his face. Bill. Jake, you're dismissed for now. I'll handle this. Bill gave a stiff nod, grabbing Jake by the arm to pull him away. Jake resisted for a second, but thought better of it. The two officers retreated to their cruiser, tails firmly tucked between their legs. Marcus turned back to Layla. Chief Walker, again, I apologize. This isn't how we run things here. Layla didn't blink. Apparently it is, and we're going to fix that, starting now. Marcus nodded slowly. Understood. Do you want me to disperse the crowd? Layla glanced at the crowd, now murmuring louder. Cameras still pointed her way. She shook her head. Number, let them watch. Transparency, right? Marcus let out a low chuckle, more from nerves than humor. Right? Transparency? Layla stepped closer, lowering her voice. Set up a meeting with Internal Affairs first thing in the morning. We're cleaning house. Marcus gave a curt nod. Consider it done. And Chief? Welcome to the department. Layla offered a thin smile. Oh, I'm just getting started. As Marcus led her back to his car, the crowd slowly began to disperse, conversations buzzing with what they had just witnessed. Jake and Bill sat stiffly in their cruiser, avoiding eye contact with everyone. For Layla, this wasn't just a bad first impression. It was a battle cry. The department was rotten, and she was ready to tear it down brick by brick. And if tonight was any indication, it was going to be one long, messy fight. The next morning, the police precinct was buzzing like a hornet's nest that had just been kicked. Word of the previous night's fiasco had spread like wildfire. Officers whispered in tight circles, exchanging nervous glances. Everyone knew something big was coming, and they were right. Layla Walker didn't walk into the station. She owned it. Dressed in a sharp navy suit, polished shoes clicking against the tile floor, She moved with purpose. Every step echoed authority. She wasn't here to blend in. She was here to change everything. Captain Marcus Reed waited by the main desk, looking like he hadn't slept a wink. He straightened up when he saw her. "Chief Walker, morning." Layla gave him a curt nod. "Morning, Captain. Conference room now. Bring internal affairs, and make sure Officers Harper and Miller are there." Marcus didn't hesitate. "Yes, ma'am." Minutes later, the conference room was filled with tension so thick you could cut it with a knife. A few high-ranking officers sat stiffly, folders in front of them. Bill Harper sat uncomfortably near the corner, eyes cast down. Jake Miller, however, looked like a deer caught in headlights, fidgeting with his hands. Layla stood at the head of the table, cool and collected. She didn't sit. Power stands. "Let's not waste time," she began, voice calm but firm. "Last night was a disaster. Not just for me, but for this entire department. What I witnessed was a reflection of a much deeper issue. And let me be clear, this ends now." She let that hang in the air. No one dared speak. Layla turned her eyes on Jake. "Officer Miller, care to explain why you thought it was appropriate to violate protocol and attempt an unlawful arrest?" Jake's mouth opened, but no words came out. He looked at Marcus for help, but none was coming. Layla didn't blink. "No? That's fine. Internal Affairs will handle your statement. And Officer Harper, your silence enabled that behavior. You're both suspended effective immediately, pending investigation." Bill's face turned pale, but he simply nodded. Jake looked like he might fall out of his chair. Layla scanned the room. "For the rest of you sitting here, thinking this doesn't apply to you, think again. We are cleaning house. If you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. That's not a threat. That's a promise." She leaned forward slightly, voice dropping to a near whisper. "This department will not tolerate abuse of power, racial profiling, or any action that disrespects the badge. If that makes anyone uncomfortable, the door's right there." Silence. Marcus cleared his throat, cautiously speaking up. "Chief, how would you like to proceed with the public? The incident last night is already all over the news." Layla straightened. "Good. Let them talk. Schedule a press conference for noon. The community deserves to hear from us, but this time they're going to hear the truth." Marcus nodded slowly. "Understood." Layla turned on her heel, heading for the door. Before leaving, she glanced back. "And Captain Reed, make sure every officer in this building knows, if they have something to hide, they better clean it up now, because I'm coming for it." With that, she walked out, heels clicking with every determined step. Outside, the precinct was already surrounded by media vans. Reporters swarmed, cameras flashing, microphones thrust forward. Layla paused at the top of the steps, surveying the scene. Then, with a steady breath, she descended. The time for change wasn't coming. It was here, and it had a name: Chief Layla Walker. What would you have done in Layla's or the officer's place? Do you think she did the right thing by taking control of the situation immediately? Maybe you or someone you know has faced similar situations with injustice. Share your stories in the comments. Leave a like if you believe change is necessary, and subscribe so you won't miss more stories that highlight important issues. This story was created with one goal: to bring attention to the problem of abuse of power and systemic injustice. We believe that open conversations help make the world a better place. Your opinion matters.